to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions.
Test 1 2 3. All right, I'm just gonna stick it to myself. Great. Okay. How you doing? Welcome back to the channel. My name is TJ Bledsoe, and we're gonna dive into this book called King, A Life by Jonathan Eig. So let's just dive into chapter 42. This chapter focused on Dr. Martin Luther King in his final days in Memphis, where he goes to support sanitation workers on site, right? And honestly, this chapter stood out because it shows how much bigger King's vision had become by the end of his life. So basically in this chapter, King goes to Memphis because sanitation workers are on strike, and they're dealing with really unsafe working conditions and low pay. Two workers actually died because of faulty equipment. So this wasn't just about money; it was about dignity and safety. So King sees this as more just a local issue. Right? To him, it represents a bigger problem: how poor and working class are treated in this country of America. That's why he gets involved. It connects directly to what he was working on with the Poor People's Campaign. So while he's there, he gives his big mountaintop speech at Mason Temple, where he talks about seeing the promised land. And then the next day, he's assassinated at the Lorraine Motel. So this chapter is kind of heavy because it shows the peak of his vision and the end of his life at the same time. So why this chapter matters for King, right? So what really stood out to me is how much King had grown as a leader. You know, as a member of Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated, he's, essentially a born leader, right? So early on, he was focused on more things like segregation and voting rights, which are obviously huge, right? But by this point, he's thinking way bigger. And now he's talking about poverty, workers' rights, and economic inequality, right? He's realizing that even if laws change, people aren't equal if they're still struggling to survive. And I think his decision to go to Memphis says a lot. He didn't have to be there, but he chose to show up for the people that's being overlooked. Now, without talking about King, you cannot talk about him being a modern day founding father of this country. And this chapter really connects the idea of that. First, he's expanding what equality actually means, right? The original founding fathers built this country and talked about freedom, but that didn't really apply to everyone, right? People who look like me were considered property and not even, a full human, as is described. But King is pushing the country to actually live up to the idea of freedom, not just legally, but economically too. Second, he's shaping the moral direction of the country. Like figures like George Washington helped establish the nation politically, but King is helping define what the country should stand for morally. Things like fairness, dignity, justice, equality, the pursuit of happiness should be for everyone, not just some people. In that way, he's not just part of history, right? He's not just a shirt. He has helped redefine this country morally. So what really hits me in this chapter is how aware King seemed to be of danger, but he kept going, right? Like the mountaintop speech almost feels like he knows something could have happened, but he accepts it. It's like a slight foreshadowing, right? That made me think about what leadership really means today. It's not just about having ideas, but it's about willing to stand on them despite all, even when it becomes a risk to everything that's around you and yourself. So, overall, chapter 42 shows King at a point where his vision had grown way beyond civil rights into something bigger. Justice for everyone, especially people being overlooked. And that's why I think it really supports the idea of him being a modern founding father, because he pushed the country closer to what it's supposed to be. And unfortunately, it's still a fight that we're fighting, even today in 2026. 58 years or so after his assassination. Thank you. I'm TJ Bledsoe. Like, subscribe, watch the others on this channel. Some great points are made here.
Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just